Next up, it's my pleasure to introduce a dear friend of mine, Miss Joy Huntington, to moderate the next panel focusing on, the title is From the Ground Up, Local Empowerment, Resilient Communities, and Economic Development. So Joy and panelists, please take the stage now. Thank you.
Awesome. Can everybody hear me okay? Hi, thank you so much for joining us. It's been wonderful interacting with you these last few days, hearing where you're from and what you do, and hearing about that passion that Rachel talks about. And it's my honor to be here today with these incredible panelists. We have quite a few, and so we're going to try to really dig into what they're passionate about and where they're coming from, and see what we can share with you today on, as Jackson mentioned, from the ground up. And that's something that I wanted to highlight for us today. Local empowerment, resilient communities, and economic development. And that has definitely transected a lot of what we've talked about. And really quickly, I am going to give a little background on everybody, and we're going to answer, or have them answer, an opening question to kind of get the juices flowing and make sure they're awake and everybody else is awake. It's the last day, and we've all been listening to each other and getting to know one another. But we want to amp up the energy a little bit. Hence my pink cuss puck and a teak look. I was excited to wear that to kind of bring some energy and brightness to the room today. So I'm really happy to be here. Speaking of from the ground up, I grew up in Manly Hot Springs, and my grandparents are from Tanana and Rampart. My great-grandmother was from Stevens Village, so kind of middle Yukon River area. I was getting into a lot of trouble as a middle schooler, high schooler. That's a conversation for later. But definitely had my own growing up experiences, and certainly am very proud to be here today. I grew up 15 years in rural Alaska. I'm the mom of 2 daughters, and I've owned a consulting business that's really meant to bring people together and provide opportunities to build economic development projects and to partner with communities along the way. And I've heard a lot of really, really strong statements on that front lately over the last few days. Not about us, without us, and just a lot of really, really powerful statements. I was also a city council woman in Fairbanks, so like my friend Mayor Bryce Ward, definitely have some local government experience as well, and I'm excited to be here today. So we're going to go down the line, starting with, so I'm a Doyon shareholder, and really excited to have Julie here, Julie Moorman with Doyon, and we're going to ask a question, and I'll say the question now, and then I'll introduce our panelists as we go down the line. So the question is, in terms of economic development, what does local empowerment mean to you? What does local empowerment look like to you? And we're gonna start with Julie. So I'm gonna pull up, even though I know Julie, we work together, I wanna make sure I'm giving you some helpful information. Julie Moorman serves as the Senior Vice President and Chief Operating Officer for Doyon Limited. Moorman was previously the General Manager for 3M's United States, Atlantic, and Pacific branches, serving Alaska, Guam, Hawaii, and Puerto Rico. She is the founder of Smart Girls Rock, serves on several boards, including the Society of Women Engineers, Diamond Engineering Academy, Montana State University College of Engineering Advisory Board, and also volunteers her time with Junior Achievement. So please welcome Julie, and we'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Thank you, Joy. It's really a pleasure to be here, and I'm the person on the stage that represents ANCs today, so that Alaska Native Corporations. And when I think about Joy's question and the opening statement that she asked us and allowed us to make, I think of ANCs as really the embodiment of resilient economics locally. So Doyon is certainly in the interior of Alaska, as most of you know, and we have businesses in Alaska, we have businesses elsewhere in the United States, but really all of the benefits of Doyon are spread through the local communities of the Doyon region, the villages of the Doyon region. And so it's really great to see how that those benefits translate locally.
Awesome. Thank you, Julie. And we're going to have Logan Birch go next. And I am really honored to have him here because I knew his father, Senator Chris Birch, who I'm sure many of you knew him. And he was just a really special person and a wonderful leader in our state. And so very honored, and it's great to get to know Logan as well. Logan Birch joined McKinley in 2021 to build a new direct lending business and led McKinley's efforts to acquire Alaska Growth Capital. Upon McKinley's acquisition in 2022, Birch assumed the role of president, leading the newly branded McKinley Alaska Growth Capital. As a lifelong Alaskan, Birch brings a wealth of senior management and lending experience, including 2012 to 2020 with Arctic Slope Regional Corporation, Alaska's largest locally owned company with revenues in excess of $3 billion. Birch has economic degrees from the University of Washington and is actively involved in the in the Anchorage community, serving and chairing multiple nonprofit boards over the years, and a past recipient of the Alaska Journal of Commerce's Top 40 Under 40 Award. So I'll hand it over to you, Logan.
And I am no longer qualified for the top 40 under 40, so thanks for the introduction. My name is Logan. I'm representing McKinley Alaska Growth Capital. You saw the little bit at the video for those of you that were here at lunch. McKinley Alaska Growth Capital is an organization that provides business loans throughout the state of Alaska. We are not a bank. We use different sources of capital to provide higher risk loans to borrowers that are having trouble finding financing. So from that perspective, the work that we do is very, very important from an economic development perspective. So speaking about local empowerment, I don't think you can have economic development without local empowerment. I just don't think it's possible. I mean, for me, I guess I'm not sure what the official definition of economic development is, but I think about private sector jobs. How do we create private sector jobs in communities? And really the two sort of pieces to that puzzle that are the most important are people and capital. So you have to have people that want to start businesses, want to buy businesses, want to work in the business. They need to know what they're doing and how to do it and be supported in lots of different ways. And that's, from that perspective, McKinley Alaska Growth Capital, we run a marketplace, we call it the North Slope Marketplace, across Alaska's North Slope, and looking for ways to sort of grow and develop entrepreneurs and business owners really sort of from a grassroots rural perspective. And then the second piece is capital. So if people are the flame, capital is the fuel to the fire for economic development to get jobs created. And that is something from Alaska Growth Capital's perspective, we provide debt capital. So we are providing loans to folks using different federal programs like the Small Business Administration and U.S. Department of Agriculture. They provide loan guarantees to induce lenders like us to take higher risks. And we do that throughout the state of Alaska.
Excellent. Thank you, Logan. Honored to have Commissioner Julie Sandy with the Department of Commerce and Community and Economic Development with us today. A lifelong Alaskan, Commissioner Sandy grew up in the remote logging camps of Southeast Alaska. She brings extensive experience in both the public and private sectors to the role of commissioner and is focused on building stronger, more resilient communities and growing Alaska's economy for the benefit of Alaskans. In her capacity as commissioner, she also serves on many boards, including the Railroad, AGDC, ADA, AEA, and the Alaska Seafood Marketing Institute. Handing it over to you, Julie.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I appreciate that. So yeah, I mean, growing up out in rural Alaska, I can tell you, I keep thinking I'm the most passionate Alaskan there is, and I'm the most, excited Alaskan. And then I come into venues like this and get to talk to some of my counterparts and meet new folks, and I realize, we're lucky enough to live in a state that's really resource rich. But like Stasha from McKinley said earlier today, my favorite resource is Alaskans, right? So in my mind, when I think about resiliency, I'm thinking about the lovely ladies that were on the panel that spoke before ours. I mean, that's the definition of resiliency right there, right? And so, for me, when I think about economic development and how we do that, we really want to be looking to local input and be asking questions and listening to the elders in the villages and in the communities to hear what economic development in each of those communities looks like for them. For folks that are from the outside, the reality is in Alaska, we speak over 20 languages, and our state is just so large that even though you may have the opportunity to visit one area and one community and get to know folks in that community, the cultures are so different across our very vast state. And so in my mind, when I think about my role now working for the state, it's really not just helping to convene groups and connect groups. When I think about economic development, it's really about listening. And then the other piece to that is just making sure that we're telling our story and telling it well. Like Logan just said, people are such an important part of that. And if we have young Alaskans in particular who are leaving our state, we have to ask ourselves why. And when I think about that, I think a lot about how we're not telling our story well enough for young Alaskans. And so I'm really excited that the governor has appropriated $5 million for part of a marketing and PR initiative. And I think that that's really key, but in particular when it comes to project development. So.
Thank you, Commissioner. And really excited that Randy Ruaro is here today. I've known him for a long time. I know it 14 years because my oldest daughter was only a few months old when we started chatting, and he was a deputy chief of staff at that time in the governor's administration. So he's joining us today on behalf of ADA. Randy is the executive director at the Alaska Industrial Development and Export Authority, the state of Alaska's economic development and finance authority. Randy most recently served as Governor Dunleavy's Chief of Staff and Special Assistant for Statehood Defense. It says Mr. Ruaro, but I'm just going to say Randy. Randy was raised in Ketchikan, Alaska, where his first job out of high school was working at the pulp mill. So he knows something about local jobs and job creation. So Randy, how would you answer that question?
Thanks, Joy. So my name is Randy Ruaro here for ADA, Alaska Industrial Development and Export Authority. ADA's mission is one thing, really, it's jobs and how important jobs are, and so we're focused on that. But we also are not allowed to operate by statute unless the local community approves our participation. So there's a strong element of local control over ADA's activities inside a municipal boundary or a borough. And then I would just add quickly to Julie's comments, Alaska really is unique when you're working on economic development. I was working on a ferry terminal project and we were making great progress, and the mayor reminded me that there were some clam beds, out in front of the ferry terminal, and right away that stopped everything because it was a subsistence resource area and you have to back up and then work through all of that impact or avoidance mitigation measures, with the local residents. So I think the more local participation early is really the key. When it comes to ANCSA lands, if it's a project on ANCSA lands, it really, in my mind, should be the ANCSA shareholders that control the decisions. I think too often, our ability to have any effective local control is affected by the federal government. We're seeing that in almost everything we do. And frankly, in my mind, it should be more an Alaskan, and the more local decision, the better. So, thanks.
I love that. Thank you. We're going to turn now to the interior, which makes me really happy. Let me see my interior Fairbanks area love in the room. There we go. There we go. The heart of Alaska, right? So Mayor Bryce Ward is a wonderful leader from the Fairbanks area. He was the mayor of North Pole, and he's also a business owner. So I'll just share his election dates. He was born and raised in Fairbanks and elected as the 12th mayor of the Fairbanks North Star Borough in October 2018 and re-elected in 2021 and is currently serving his second term as a three-year mayor. And he owns Ward Alaska LLC, a small general contracting company, and owns residential rental homes in North Pole, where he lives with his wife and their two sons. So a pleasure to have you here today, Mayor Ward, and how would you answer that question?
Thanks, Joy. So local empowerment to me is when I get to sit down with residents of my community and talk about business ideas and opportunities. When they see an opportunity to meet a need and they feel that they have the tools available to them to take a risk, to go out and meet that need, sometimes putting everything on the line. That's local empowerment, and that's what I love being involved in.
Ooh, I like that. Thank you. So we have, and we didn't mean to like separate by US and our Canadian friends. It just kind of happened. I swear I didn't tell them that they had to sit at the end. I guess it does kind of work out because, you know, some of our questions will be kind of specific to Canada as well. So I'm very honored to have Madeline Redfern joining us from Iqaluit, Nunavut. Been practicing that. So she is an Indigenous woman involved in high tech and innovation, actively involved in transformative technologies and telecommunications, transportation, and energy. Madeline is the Chief Operating Officer of CanArctic Inuit Networks, Inc., working to build 500 kilometers of subsea fiber optic cable into and through Canada's north to serve communities, private sector, and defense, and support the development of an Arctic digital sector. She's also the former mayor of Iqaluit, and which is very cool. So we have some local government leadership as well. And Madeline received the Inspire Award for Public Service to acknowledge and celebrate all her hard work, commitment, and contributions. Thank you for being here, Madeline, and how would you answer that question?
I could just also sort of say that we've seen in many of our communities in Canada where economic development actually has not involved as many local people as there could and there should have been, which I think is in part why and how Inuit negotiated our Nunavut land claim agreement and trying to have more say over, you know, not only governance, the delivery of services to our people, but also to be able to be involved in all the different economic opportunities there are. That being said, is we know that there's a massive infrastructure deficit and gaps, or, you know, in these areas of whether it's telecommunications, we're 100% satellite dependent, or in energy, we're 100% diesel dependent, and in transportation, many of our airports are small, not paved, and this restricts the types of aircraft that can come into our communities. So when we're looking at economic development from a local perspective, is that we need a lot of infrastructure to be built, and so that's a huge economic driver. But also too is that, you know, when we find those solutions, we need to ensure that we build it and to the point that it future-proofs our community, so that we're not building power plants that meets the needs of our communities of yesterday, or similarly in telecommunications or in transportation. So that's why I'm particularly interested in working with our communities about where are those strategic transformative investments, and how can our people participate in a way that is meaningful, so that it's not just, you know, sort of outsiders, because we do what we call a lot of economic boomerang. So most of the billions of dollars that we have every year, a lot of it ends up in our southern counterparts instead of actually remaining in our community. And we need to build not only the infrastructure, but build the capacity of our people so that they have the education, they have the skills, and they have the ability to not only maybe participate by being in business or in employees, but what I would challenge is that, you know, we want to see, you know, the owners of these companies living in our communities. We want to see the board of directors living in our communities, because I can tell you that earlier high level in governance, you know, around these projects is where you can then ensure that local empowerment, because local participation is actually happening.
Awesome. Thank you, Madeline. And we're definitely sensing as well that, you know, there's the vision side, and then there's the reality side of what, you know, what are the obstacles, what is the lay of the land currently. And some communities, as we heard during lunch, you know, don't have their basic needs being met for safety, sanitation. And so the you know, landscape there literally is much different. And so, you know, we have to bear that into the discussion as well. So we're going to turn to Andrew Smith, who is an intergovernmental relations officer in the government of Yukon, working closely with both the Public Service and the Cabinet Office. Andrew concentrates on building strategic international and Arctic relationships and policy for the Yukon. Key areas of interest for the Yukon's international partnership are critical minerals development and export, Pan-Arctic transportation links and tourism, and building the research and innovation economy in the territory. And I just have to add one more really fun piece of information. In 2021, he received the highest award in Yukon's public service for ending seasonal time changes. So we all think we've accomplished a lot. That is exceptional. So I thought that was really cool and wanted to share that. Thank you, Andrew, for being here. And please,
Thank you, Joy. Once we knew that that project was going to be successful, they told me, Andrew, you're going to be dining out on that factoid for the rest of your career. And I'm here for it. I'll talk time change with you any day of the week. I mean, for a little bit of context on how Yukon is and operates and how we govern. I mean, we've got our municipalities and our communities that, some of them have municipal powers for taxes and that, and other ones are villages and towns or local area councils. 17 of those, depending how you count them. And then we've got 14 First Nations in Yukon. 11 of those have final agreements, which include, constitutionally protected measures regarding a whole bunch of things, including economic development. Let's take a step up from there. My government, Yukon government, we've got our strategies and ideas of developing infrastructure, having a vision for the territory cohesively, and then, of course, our friends in the federal government to help us out to accomplish a lot of the things through any number of works. So similar to what Madam was saying, I think the key thing for Yukon government in that hierarchy is to create the conditions for the communities to be successful in the ways that they want to be successful. And we want to support them to do that. Yukon government will certainly have a vision about what sectors we want to push and which ones we want to move, but those aren't going to go anywhere if we don't have the communities coming from the ground up to ask and for us to cooperate to build what's needed in order to accomplish that.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Andrew. And I would just, in building off of what's been shared, the things that came to mind for me really quickly are local solutions and local ownership. And ownership really matters a lot. And having one of our ANCs, leadership here today as well. And as a Bean Ridge, Manly Hot Springs shareholder, we own our land, and that means a lot to me. It means a lot to my daughters, and how we got there is really important. And so that idea of local ownership is certainly something that we're talking about today. So I'm gonna shift a question over for Commissioner Sandy, for Randy, and for Julie. Can you speak to the projects you are currently engaged in working towards the goal of economic development and community resilience? I know we've kind of hit on that a little bit already, but maybe some examples of what you're working on. Thank you.
I can go first, Joy. So probably the most successful project that Ada has is the Red Dog Mine in Nana region. I think it's over $2 billion in 7I income that's been shared with Alaska Natives across the whole state. 50 to 60% shareholder hire, $100,000 a year annual salary. It's been going since I think the mid-'80s, and it's going to go to at least 2031 and maybe much longer. So it's really, I think, the best example of a project that Ada has. Other things, well, we're trying to recreate that in other projects. So we have the Ambler Road project, which is a road, access road to the Ambler Mining District, hoping for similar results, right? And we'll just try to keep replicating that. Ada partnered with NANA and the Red Dog Mine. A lot of other entities will be trying to do that same thing. So I'll be spending a lot of time in your region, I think, this summer. So, and I'm looking forward to it. It'll be good.
We're looking forward to having you.
Yeah, thank you.
As a member of the ADA board for a few years now, and before I was in this position, even though I'm a lifelong Alaskan, my kids are fifth-generation Alaskans, I'm embarrassed to say I really didn't know much about the Red Dog Mine before I became a board member, right? So after I became a board member, I understood how important the mission of ADA is to Alaska and how unique and how lucky we are to have an arm of the state, a corporate agency essentially, that's able to be nimble and to take action on things like the Red Dog Mine. So I get so excited about that, but as the life of the mine sort of winds down, the ADA board looks to other projects to help replace that revenue, to help support communities and projects that are really, really vital in the region. And so I get really excited about the opportunities, but also really hopeful that we can start to tell our project development side of the story better. Nobody does responsible resource development better than Alaska and Alaskans. And so I'm looking forward to being a part of telling that story better. But the other piece of that in terms of the Department of Commerce, so we have, our mission is threefold, but one of the things that we try to do is, in particular, in addition to economic development, we promote strong communities and also protect consumers. And so one thing I really love was the broadband initiative, and I happen to have my former boss, Randy Rear, who's the chief of staff at the time, and I was probably on the job for all of 2 minutes when he said, so what do you think about standing up the Office of Alaska Broadband under the Department of Commerce? And he caught me on a good day, or the fact that I just still didn't know where the bathrooms were, but either way I said, sure. But it ended up being a really, a project that's really close to my heart because of our ability to access rural Alaska, both from the health and wellness piece of it, and connecting Alaskans to education, health, but also jobs, and especially at a time where we need folks who are able to join the workforce, and we are able to tap into that better through rural Alaska and our access through rural Alaska. So I'm excited about that under the Department of Commerce.
Thank you. I think time is running down, so I'll try to be brief, but I wanted to share 4 rather concrete examples of things that Doyen is doing specifically. And I think adding on to one of the previous panelists, education is really important and a passion of mine. And Doyen funds largely a foundation that is very focused on education for Doyen shareholders. And I think that we don't talk about that very much, but that's a really important building block for local talent management and opportunities in communities. So that's the first point I wanted to make. The second is, while Doyen is a regional corporation, so we focus on the whole region, we really try to help and partner with the village corporations. So we do training webinars with the Doyen village corporations each month. We talk about important things that are happening in our company, but also things that we can share to help them be more successful as village corporations. We have a 2-day seminar each summer to really work with those village corporations and talk about strategic planning and how can they build their businesses up from the bottom and let them have ownership, but help them along the way and give them some guidance and some perspective. I think that's really important. Adding on to what Julie said, Doyen recently submitted an application for a grant with a local telecom provider here, ACS, for a really large telecom project that was funded by the federal government for infrastructure and telecommunications for many of the Yukon River villages. And we think that's going to be a game changer. That's not something that we're going to make a profit on. It's something that we're doing because we really care about those villages, and we think it will make a difference. And then the last thing I'll mention is we're doing a big carbon project. We launched a sale of carbon credits last year, and we can intend to continue with the carbon projects with offsets and improved forestry and management. And we're working with the villages as they see the potential for their lands to be developed and to have these opportunities. We're trying to help them and share our experience and our knowledge and give them a hand up along the way. So quite a few exciting examples of what we're doing.
Awesome, thank you. As a shareholder, thank you. Logan, and I know we're running short on time, and so we're gonna try to get through and ask a question to our remaining panelists as well. definitely, if we can be brief, then we can try to get through and share a little bit more with everybody. Logan, can you discuss some of the challenges and opportunities in working with local communities from the financial capital side of the equation in economic development?
Okay, brief. Just wanted to touch on a couple of points, why Alaska Growth Capital exists, why we do, why are we necessary. So we all saw the very, I guess, passionate presentation at lunch. You saw the pictures of what New Talk looks like. Can you imagine a New York City-based bank making a loan in New Talk? They don't. They don't do it. The banking industry got in big trouble many decades ago with something called redlining, where they basically would not finance. On the business lending side, which is where I live, that effectively still occurs today. Banks will have policies, and I'm not picking on any one banks, but they have to do this for risk reasons, but banks will have policies that is a policy exception to make a business loan to a business that's not on the road system. Well, that's a whole lot of rural Alaska is not on the road system. Banks have policies that restrict the ability to finance specialty assets like aircraft. Well, if you don't live on the road system, an aircraft is not a very special asset. It is very critical to every single day needs. So those are just a couple of examples that why rural Alaska sometimes struggle getting business loans that other places in more urban centers here in Alaska and lower 48, they don't have those issues. And that is sort of the niche that we are filling and trying to serve.
Well, that's wonderful, and I'm really excited to hear about what you're doing there. So for Mayor Ward, what goals does the Fairbanks North Star Borough currently have for economic development and resilient communities, and how should the state be a partner in this? And maybe for time, maybe just the first part of that question would probably work.
Yeah, so the Fairbanks North Star Borough just went through a process where we redeveloped our SED. So it's a comprehensive economic development strategy. And it's actually, there's law in Alaska where communities are supposed to have these, and our borough represents our interior area. So it actually fits in really nicely. The state has a SEDS as well. And we definitely took that into consideration and had actually involvement in the statewide SEDS. So that's really been the kind of vision, if you will, that we've cast out for the community, and it's helped focus our energy. But in support of that, what we find is that local small businesses really need information. They need data on your local communities. And so what we find is that as a local government, one of the most powerful things that we can do is to harness that information on our economy, on our community, and share it with the public. Some of the big businesses can have access to that. They can pay for consultants to do that work. But with your small businesses, the mom and pops in town, the brother and sister family joint ventures, they need access to that information. Your local government can be a powerful tool in that. And I think the state can help support that as well when we look at statewide kind of analysis of how our communities are doing, where the needs are. And we find that our businesses, they literally take that information to the bank to get financing to move forward with their ventures. So it's incredibly powerful.
Awesome, thank you. So to close out, I wanted to turn to our panelists from Canada. Can you speak to how your region strategizes to promote economic development in local communities, particularly in sparsely populated regions like the Yukon that are similar to challenges in Alaska?
We do have different sort of mechanisms. The communities have the ability to do their own local economic development strategies. I would say that where we have some gaps is potentially developing the regional strategies or even specific ones to, let's say, energy or a telecommunication strategy and a transportation strategy. And our Inuit organization has done a really interesting report, which was looking at where are those economic opportunities and where are the needs and the gaps. But that's not a strategy. That's a really important first step towards developing that strategy. So we also recognize and understand is that, telecommunications is something that can also be more than that. You can support that by creating a whole digital sector. We also know that with Canada in the Arctic, we have almost over 50% of the coastline. And while Canada is working on developing a blue economy strategy, we have to remind them that the North, has coastlines, and we want to be part of that. So there's a lot of, sometimes that's coming up from the ground up, and sometimes, top down, and there's gaps. But while we are huge in geography, we're actually relatively small in population. So I advocate very strongly to have us all in the room, because we collective, smarts can do a lot better in figuring out, how we develop these strategies where we can definitely prosper and benefit.
Awesome. And before we turn it to Andrew to close out, I just wanted to comment on how, Logan and yourself also are hitting on a few things. Educating people about what our challenges are in remote parts of our countries and states and provinces. So educating and advocacy, advocating. The women that came up today, I mean, we all were emotionally touched by what they shared and the reality of what they're living with and what their challenges are. And so I think each of us, it's our job to educate people, to advocate, and that's why we've all come here, I feel, as well. So I think that fits in really well, and hopefully we can start to continue to level that playing field, right? So that people have opportunities to grow businesses and to thrive and be healthy and be happy. So with that, Andrew, last but not least, please, how would you answer that last question?
Yeah, the government that I'm working under, in their first term, it was very much building strategies on a whole number of fronts: clean energy and climate change, healthcare, becoming guiding documents for what is turning into their second term. Now, there's other ones that are on the way. Our innovation strategy is imminent to come in to the Yukon. Our immigration strategy is the next one to come out in the next 24 months. And in order to support that, the things that are built or have been built to accommodate and show what Yukon has, not only the access to our mineral resources, which are the stuff of legend and Klondike Gold Rush and all that, and we continue to mine and export, but we have the first innovation incubator in North of 60 Canada, in Northlight Innovation. We have the first university north of 60 in Canada. So we've not only have the physical infrastructure and the fiber optic lines, the redundancy loop being completed in the next 12 months, those can be in place then to support the next generation of industry and interaction, the digital economy and interaction with the physical economy, and hopefully supply minerals that will get us to the clean economy.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Andrew. And we have 1 minute remaining. So, I just wanted to thank each of you for being here and for contributing to this incredible symposium. Jackson and Rachel are the energy that they put into putting this event together, and that dedication and hard work is something that I think each of us, if we all, chased our passions with that much dedication, and brought people together like this, we will really push the needle, and we will help our remote communities, our small communities, and really, there's only lines. The lines only exist where we allow them to be. Whether it's urban Alaska or rural Alaska, whether it's Canada and Alaska, we are all in this together. And there's a quote from an elder in Minto, Alaska, that I wanted to share. And he said one time that I am not the answer, that when we work together, we are the answer. So no matter how incredible each of us are, because we're all pretty incredible, it's when we work together and when we share in that effort and ideas and find those solutions. So thank you all so much for being here, and look forward to seeing you hopefully at the dinner this evening as well.